Hi, my name is Matthew Hyde, and I will be discussing the futuristic war machines that were envisioned during World War I, the interwar period, and World War II. While most of these machines were impractical and simply science fiction, many of them developed into technologies that are common today. For example, the picture here shows two men operating a tank with radio controls, allowing the machine to be unmanned. The image here shows a more high-tech radio-controlled tank equipped with missile launchers on both sides. Radio-controlled tanks of the 1930s were supposed to save lives on both sides. Instead of sending soldiers into battle, machines would take their place. This opened up several futuristic ideas of unmanned vehicles and war machines where human casualties could be entirely avoided in war. A future where conflict was decided by battling robots was viewed as a utopian solution to war. This image of a robot titan was shown in a December 1916 issue of the magazine Illustrated World. While the robot drawn here is several stories tall, the artist envisioned the robot as being 9 feet tall and 750 pounds, and equipped with its own guns, being able to tower over infantry in battle. These gigantic robots, drawn in 1934, were explicitly envisioned to fight our battles for us, and whatever robot won, that nation would be declared the victor. The casualties would be solely among robots of steel and copper, who would be operated by people elsewhere by radio or other signaling methods. It is interesting that these utopian views involve wars having no human deaths, rather than a world without war. Following the bleak outcome of World War I, many people took it to themselves to imagine and redesign weapons of war. One such instance is the trench destroyer seen in this picture. With the gruesome reality of trench warfare, this technology aimed to eliminate it. It is not hard to pinpoint the impracticality of this device, but it is interesting to examine these so-called weapons of tomorrow. It is important to look back and understand the technology that sparked the imagination of so many futuristic weapons. The development of radio made long-range communication possible to both man and machine. This opened up several ideas of unmanned vehicles and machines that were controlled from a safe place and human casualties could be avoided. The technology of radio communication was viewed by many as having unlimited potential. This image here shows almost every part of society under radio control, including television, ships, and airplanes. The belief that radio could do anything led England in the 1930s to seek a radio death ray and a radio shield over London, which we now know is impossible. However, England would soon discover radar, which is still used to this day. Pictured here is an American M2 light tank that was used in World War I and in the interwar period that had to be manned by several people. There was no technology at the time, nor even today, that allowed a driverless tank to be operated more efficiently than a manned tank. While many people had their eyes in the future, where all technologies of war required no humans to operate, they were stuck in the present with early model tanks such as this. However, in 1931, the Japanese displayed a remote-controlled tank that ignited interest in the subject. While the picture does not seem to be of an official type, it is evidently genuine. The tank itself was very small and not suited for war, as it had no offensive capabilities. However, it introduced that the idea of a driverless tank was conceivable. During the Second World War, driverless tanks were under the domain of the Nazis. These tanks, called Beetles, were strapped with explosives and driven into Allied vehicles and tanks. Although they were unmanned, they were not wireless. These Beetles could only travel as far as their attached wire would take them. While this technology was improving, it was still extremely limited. The tank depicted here in 1936, called the Flame Tank, was another machine that ironically aimed to make war less brutal. The premise behind the Flame Tank was that if humans could make war too horrible to comprehend, the nations would simply no longer engage in it. However, it would seem that after 2 world wars, we have not reached that point yet. This image of the design of the Flame Tank shows that the idea was not only imagined but followed through with. The flame-spitting machine would supposedly cause armies to run at the sight of it, not wanting to experience a painful death. Both Allied and Axis powers used versions of this tank in World War II. Perhaps unsurprisingly, it did not contribute in any way to make the war less catastrophic. Fitting with the common theme of futuristic weapons at the time, the Flame Tank was also envisioned by some to be driverless. The image shows soldiers sitting back while the tanks destroy fortifications and burn people alive. Not only is the tank supposedly brutal enough to stop battles or wars, but it does not even risk the lives of those operating it. The idea of the flame tank can be compared to the Cold War to modern-day concept of mutually assured destruction. With the flame tank, both sides would not want to fight each other to avoid the catastrophic results of the weapon. In the Cold War a few decades later, this concept would be enacted on a much larger scale. However, as previously stated, the flame tank did not have this result. Airborne drones were another very popular technology at this time. Although the technology was in a primitive state, it was constantly developing. Early drones were used as target practice for the Navy. Several advancements were made when the military began experimenting with the radio-controlled aircraft with television cameras. Although not as effective as conventional weapons, there were some successes with drones fit with explosives being used as torpedoes. Many television-equipped drones were built but never saw battle. The aircraft here was named the XBQ-1, and the television transmitted video could be viewed elsewhere. However, the technology for accurate radio control did not exist yet, as the XBQ-1 crashed during its first test flight. Even with these failures, the military promised to continue developing tech in this field. This drone here is a result of modern success in unmanned aircraft control. Named the MQ-9 Reaper, the drone has a top speed of 300 miles per hour, has an operational ceiling of 25,000 feet, can stay in the air for up to 14 hours, and is equipped with 20 missiles. This is the future of unmanned aircraft that people believed was science fiction in the 1930s and 40s. On the ground, the United States military still prefers manned vehicles. While these tanks are much more rugged and powerful than their World War II counterparts, they were not the futuristic war machines depicted almost a century earlier. They do not shoot terrifying flames, they are not unmanned, and they certainly are not giant robots. I will end this presentation with an image that would have satisfied the people in the 1930s who were looking forward to the time when war would be fought between these giant robots. In truth, these robots were built for recreational competition between America and Japan and would be unconventional weapons of war. While several futuristic weapons such as these robots never came to fruition, others such as unmanned drones and radio communication are common in today's military.